Hello. In this video, I will be showing you how jihadists kill at least 12 soldiers in Niger. Stay tuned and remember to subscribe and always like our videos.
Staying in West Africa, 29 soldiers have died in an attack by suspected jihadists in Niger Republic. According to the Defense Ministry, it's the deadliest such attack since the military takeover in a coup at the end of July. In a televised statement, officials said the troops had been targeted by more than 100 militants using weapons, including improvised explosive devices. 3 days of national mourning have been declared. Jihadists' attacks on the army have risen since the military seized power. The military had stated that it had staged the coup to be better able to fight militants. Let's get more on the situation in Niger Republic and that attack. We're being joined on the program by Mohammed Yusuf. He joins us from Nairobi. Great to see you today.
Thanks for having me.
Right, so what a paradox in Niger's story. A military takeover by the end of July. Can you tell us what Niger is like just now with the news of 29 soldiers who were supposed to be maintaining security, a part of what the coup plotters had said they wanted to take care of, which is why they took over in July. And they were killed in cold blood, and why the army appears to be having trouble containing the militants.
According to the military junta, they're saying that some of these troops were coming back from an operation, and particularly in Tahoa region. That's where the attack took place. On their way back, they were ambushed by these militants. We know that in Niger, there are Islamic States, some terrorist organizations allied to Al Qaeda. Of course, there are other also banditry going on in the country. It is an ambush, and it is the deadliest since the junta came to power. If you from back in July, around mid-August, that's when there was a high number of military deaths. I was about 17. And now we are talking of 29, and that is a situation, of course, as they progress and time goes on, they're going to face, and also that comes at a time when we know that the region itself is having troubles, and Burkina Faso, Mali, we know that their military administrations that is in control, and they are not happy generally with the international organizations, whether it's the UN, different African countries, even some foreign countries, and that is going to complicate the situation. And this kind of attacks is what this kind of terrorist organizations are quite lethal. They use this kind of attacks. Of course, they're not going to face military face on, and they're going to continue this kind of attacks, and it's going to, as time progresses, of course, this is what is going to happen, and security is going to take time before situation is going to change or improve.
Right. So do you think that the coup plotters were kind of wary of the militants, that something like this might happen, or was there any kind of improvement in the country's security situation since the military takeover at the end of July?
If you look at Niger generally, I think according to the data that is available by the ACLIDE, the US-based that tracks on this political and terrorism and across the world, if you look at Niger, it's kind of fared well. If you compare it with its neighbor, Burkina Faso and Mali, that is during the last president. There have been, of course, bad times back in 2019, 2020. There's a high likelihood of more violence now, but it's not that deadly. But we know that it's just 2 months that since the military junta came to power. With the numbers and data that will be available, will that be something different? I think 2 months is very short time to know exactly whether the situation has improved or not. I think by the end of the about 6 months, we're able to tell whether the situation has worsened or has improved. But this is as a military, of course. They are the ones now in charge. The other guy, President Mohamed Bazoum, was a politician. They've blamed him. They are the men who have always been on the war front and managing all this security situation. They quite understand the problem. And at times, the blame will always be there on the political side of it. But now they are the ones in control, and the blame now will go to them. But as we know, as Niger, the military is not that strong. The personnel is not there if you compare to other neighboring countries. But as we know, is the situation going to improve? I think we have to wait and see. But so far, they have been faring well compared to their neighbors. But now, as they kick out more foreign troops, whether they're from the United Nations, from France, the US, or not wanting to do any relationship with other countries, for example, like Nigeria, then that is going to complicate things for them. We know that there's two regions where there's been a lot of problems. This Teleberi region and Tahoa. If you look at Teleberi, it borders Burkina Faso and Mali. If you look at Tahoa, it borders Mali and Nigeria, and all this is a problem for both nations. And if they don't want to do anything with these neighbors, then it's going to be more complicated, more problems for them.
Right, and Mohammed, not so often does this happen, but when militants or the criminals that attack innocent civilians in countries claim responsibility for the attack, they say that this is for this particular reason, that they've done this, they're fighting for this, just like Boko Haram here in Nigeria. So what kind of message do you think that the militants are trying to pass, even though there's a military government in place in Niger Republic?
The message of terrorists, of course, is they're not going to change. Whether you have whoever is in power, that won't change. But I think it's a very clear message. You, Ibrahim Traore, who is in power, and Mohamed Bazoum are not different. We're going to continue to carry out attack. And also this kind of, we know that when, with all these military juntas, they're kind of closing themselves, they're looking inward, they don't want to look outside. That, by all of that, they're going to kick many people out, and that is going to create pockets of there are going to be, of course, gaps, and militaries like the UN or France, of course, will be living, and they can't cover those gaps. We know that they're also fearing a region. There can be a region military coming together and attacking Niger or the junta there if they don't transition to a civilian rule. All that pressure is there, and they're trying to accumulate their powers depending on the way they look at things, and they're going to get out some of these military men depending on the situation, the circumstances, and how they want to cover the area. And that in itself, when they go in there, that they're going to create that gap. It's been there, that gap has been there, but now with a lot of tension, with many forces living, that is going also to complicate a lot for them. And the relationship, they're not having a good relationship with the countries in the region apart from Burkina Faso and Mali. And that is going to bring a lot of problem for them. And the intelligence sharing may not be there because of the relations. And that is not going to work with the military unless they look around and try to make sure they work with the neighbors and include, they can't, of course, work on their own. They have to work with other countries to achieve that security, which is good interest, even for Nigeria itself, of course.
The VOA's Mohammed Yusuf. Mohammed, thank you for that update. We're in Mali now, weeks after Islamist militants blocked the roads to Timbuktu in August, so halting trucks laden with goods, river and air routes were also shut. With the city's isolation complete, the shelling then began. On September 21, a blast hit a hospital inside the ancient city in northern Mali, killing 2 children. That's according to witnesses and a local official. On the same day, another shell laden near a school housing survivors of an attack on a passenger boat that killed more than 100 people. 3 months after the United Nations began winding down its peacekeeping mission, a local al-Qaeda affiliate launched an offensive in the center of the West African country, targeting civilians and the army. Meanwhile, a peace accord held together by the United Nations has fallen apart, leading to a resurgence of fighting between the army and ethnic Tuareg rebels from the north, who in recent weeks have looted military bases across an area spanning hundreds of miles. Conflict deaths have spiked since the UN left, and security analysts worry that the country may collapse entirely. Mali's military rulers, who consolidated power over 2 coups in 2020 and 2021, severed ties with former colonial power France and kicked out its troops. Residents wary of falling rockets avoid food and cattle markets. A nightly curfew has emptied the usually bustling evening streets, and residents want to leave but fear death if they try.
Yeah, Timbuktu has been, in fact, the new epicenter of fighting between jihadists, government forces, and Tuareg rebels. Jihadists have imposed a blockade since August. Since then, few goods have arrived the city. People are obviously, in panic or getting worried. Many are leaving. And it might get worse because the UN, the peacekeeping force is still there, helping a bit of, to achieve a bit of stability. But once they're out, then violence might really, spike. But this time, the Malian government basically asked everybody to leave. First, the French anti-terror mission last year, now the UN peacekeeping force. The country is isolated. It's hard to see who might come to Mali's rescue this time. And everybody is basically praying that the conflict won't, turn to a larger instability in the region.
To politics now, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has confirmed his intention to run for a third term in the presidential election scheduled for December. President Sisi, a former army chief who has been president since 2014, had been widely expected to run again and secure a third term after constitutional amendments 4 years ago that would allow him to stay in office until 2030. President Sisi came to power after leading the ousting of democratically elected Mohamed Morsi of the Muslim Brotherhood in 2013. He won both 2014 and 2018 polls with 97% of the vote. In recent times, Egypt has been struggling with record inflation and a chronic shortage of foreign currency. An army colonel, Mike Mikombe, has been sentenced to death in the Democratic Republic of Congo for his role in the killing of more than 50 demonstrators in August. Troops serving under Mr. Mikombe opened fire in the eastern city of Goma on members of a religious sect taking part in a banned protest against the UN peacekeeping force. 3 other officers have also been convicted by a military tribunal and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Colonel Mikombe's lawyers have said that they will appeal the charge of crimes against humanity. Welcome back. Executive Director of the Institute for Global Dialogue, Pilani Mthembu, says that the GDP of BRICS countries has exceeded that of G7 countries when measured by purchasing power parity. He was speaking at the World After Hegemony session of the Valdai Discussion Club's 20th annual meeting in Sochi on Monday. Also speaking at the session, former Vice President of the New Development Bank, Paulo Batista, remarked that the BRICS Monetary Fund needs to strengthen its position relative to the IMF. The ongoing 20th annual meeting of the Valdai Discussion Club, titled Fair Multipolarity, is being held in Sochi and will end on October the 5th. In attendance are 140 experts, politicians and diplomats from Eurasia, Africa, North and South America.
That this year, in purchasing power parity, that the GDP of BRICS surpassed that of the G7. But also we know that if you are moving towards a multipolar world order, you certainly cannot resolve or seek to resolve, global problems with a very small grouping of relatively homogeneous countries.
Well, Kenya says a multinational security force will soon be deployed in Haiti after the UN voted to back the East African nation's offer to lead the mission. Foreign Affairs Minister Alfred Mutua is now calling on international partners to help Kenya put together an effective multinational support mission that within a short time will be in Haiti. Late on Monday, the UN Security Council overwhelmingly approved the deployment of the Kenyan-led international force to help combat widespread gang violence in Haiti. The resolution was approved with 13 votes in favor and 2 abstentions from China and Russia. Health Matters, the World Health Organization has recommended the use of a second malaria vaccine to curb the life-threatening disease spread to humans by female Anopheles mosquitoes. WHO Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus made the announcement at a briefing in Geneva. The R21 Matrix M, developed by Britain's University of Oxford, will be rolled out in some African countries in early 2024 and available mid-2024 in other countries. Doses of R21 will cost between $2 and $4. The R21 is a mass-produced Serum Institute of India and uses Novavax Matrix M adjuvant.
It gives me great pleasure to announce that WHO is recommending a second vaccine called R21 Matrix M to prevent malaria in children at risk of the disease in areas with seasonal transmission. It reduced symptomatic cases of malaria by 75% in the 12 months following a 3-dose series of the vaccine. At a cost of between $2 and $4 a dose, it's comparable with other recommended malaria interventions and other childhood vaccines.
Department. Next to Dr. O'Brien.
Now, the United Nations spokesperson, Stefan Dujarric, has been providing updates on the humanitarian situations in Libya, Sudan, and Niger Republic. In Libya, Mr. Dujarric reported more than 125,000 people have been reached with life-saving assistance, including food, water, and health items. The UN mission is battling cholera in parts of Sudan, while heavy rains are affecting the south of Niger Republic.
More than 125,000 people have been reached in Libya with life-saving assistance, including food, water, and health items. More than a dozen UN agencies and humanitarian partners are on the ground, helping set up field hospitals and water tanks and providing protection services to people impacted by the floods around Derna. The people are telling us that they need affordable food and housing assistance, as well as access to health care, banking services, psychosocial support, and safe drinking water. Turning to Sudan, the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs is expressing alarm over the spread of cholera in the country. An outbreak has already been declared in the eastern state of Gedaref, and investigations are now underway to determine whether cholera has also spread to Khartoum and South Kordofan. WHO says there have been increasing number of reports of acute watery diarrhea in both states. In Gedaref, more than 260 suspected cholera cases have been reported. 16 people have died reportedly. In Niger, as heavy rains continue there, our humanitarian colleagues are concerned about flooding, particularly impacting in the southern part of the country. Last week alone, 13,000 people were affected, and since July, according to the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, some 160,000 people have been impacted by floods, with more than 14,000 houses have been collapsed and over 50 deaths. The de facto authorities in Niger and aid agencies continue to support the response.
Fears for safety in Burkina Faso have caused 1 in 4 schools to be closed, with over 1 million children out of school. Humanitarian workers feel Burkina Faso is one of the world's most neglected crisis-ridden areas, where the military junta has not kept its promise to tackle Islamist militants who still control large parts of the country. More than 2 million people have been forced from their homes by the violence. UNICEF says it's working with the government to support children in areas that are worst affected by Burkina Faso's security crisis, but so far only 13% of the funds it needs have been allocated. Finally, Johnson Lubem, a skilled Nigerian craftsman from Boko, Benue State, is turning iron scraps into fully functional motorbikes and aspires to revolutionize the industry. All he needs is the right investors to help him achieve his dream of making many more of his ingenious creations.
Okay, as you can see, I've been doing this thing for years. I was a mechanic, motorcycle mechanic. I used to do motorcycle on the roadside, and then what gave me love to start doing all of this was when I start customizing bike. I start like this by customizing bikes. Then I will go and buy an old bike, and I will now customize it and redesign it into my own design. So one day now I say, let me go to the scrap yard, and I pick some scrap, buy some pipes, then I take it here to my house, like I'm doing right now. And then from there I say, let me just start building bike from the scratch, like building it from the beginning to finish. So from there I built my first bike from the beginning to finish. The bike turned up unique. For now, I have like more than 40 something bikes I built from scratch to finish. And now I'm even doing some research to bring up my electric vehicles that can run without fuel.
That's Network Africa. Thank you for watching. I'm Joka Rogers.